All right, this is AP Biology information. On the formula sheet, we're looking at Simpson's Diversity Index. You already took biodiversity notes in your AP Bio comp book. So when we're using Simpson's Diversity Index, it's another formula. 1 minus, we know this means the sum of, parentheses, lowercase n over capital N, and that amount is squared. So lowercase n means the total number of organisms of a particular species divided by the total number of organisms of all of the species in that ecosystem that you're looking at. And then, of course, once you find that, you have to square it. You do that for each species in that ecosystem, then you add them together, and you take that amount, and it's 1 minus that amount to get your diversity index. Okay, so, for example, here is an ecosystem. Each little speckle represents a critter. Critters of the same color represent a species. So green is one species, pink is another, yellow is another, blue is another. So in this ecosystem, I have 12 individuals of the green species. I have 1 individual of the yellow species. I have 2 individuals of the pink species. I have 1 individual of the blue species. So we are going to use Simpson's biodiversity index in order to determine the biodiversity of this ecosystem. I guess I can do that. All right. So here's our formula. Here's the tally of the critters that are in that ecosystem. Lowercase n is the number of individuals of that species. N is how many critters do you have in all. So you have to do each species individually. So for green, there are 12 green. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There are 16 critters in all. So 12, let's see if I can get all of this on there. 12 divided by 16 is going to be 0.75. We're going to square that. 0.75 squared is 0.5625. We're doing 4 numbers after the decimal. We're doing 4, rounding to 4 decimal places simply because the numbers are going to be very small, so we need to get as much data from it as possible. All right, yellow species, there's only 1 of those critters, but there's still 16 total in the ecosystem. So 1 divided by 16 is 0.0625 squared equals 0.0039. If I had room, I'd put it right out next to it, but I'm going to run out of room here. There are 2 critters in the pink species. 2 divided by 16 is 0.125. Squared that is 0.0156. And then finally, blue. 1 of those critters, so we know that's 0.0625 squared, which is 0.0039. So I've done this, for each species. Now I need to do this. So next, let's pink show up? Yeah, pink does not show up too well. But now I'm going to do this part right here. So I have to take this, and this, and this, and this number and add them all together. And so when I add them all together, yeah, we can see that. We're going to get 0.5859. But I'm not done. The one thing that students most commonly forget to do is they stop right here. They think that they're done. They forget this part right here. So 1 minus 0.5859 gives me about 0.41. That is your Simpson's index diversity value, 0.41. So ecosystem number 1, 0.41. All right. Ecosystem number 2. So now we have another ecosystem. Same thing, different colored specks are representing different species. We need to know the number of each, of how many individuals are in each species. So there are 4 pink, that's one species, 4 yellow, that's another species, 4 blue, 4 green. Right, we're going to apply the diversity index again. Okay, let's see if I can move this over a little bit. Okay, so I have 4 pink, 4, 4, 4, 4 out of 16 total. 4 divided by 16 gives me 0.25. Got to square that, and that's going to give me 0.0625. Yellow, there's 4. Same thing, 0.0625. Blue, there's 4. I'm going to get the same thing, 0.0625. Green, there's 4. Same thing as above, 0.0625. And got to do the sum, so I've got to add all these together. When I add all of these together, I'm going to get 0.25. Then I have to do the 1 minus part. 1 minus 0.25 equals 0.75. And so that's our Simpson biodiversity index value. When we compare these two ecosystems then, ecosystem number 1 was 0.41, ecosystem number 2 was 0.75. The closer you are to 1, the more diverse, the more biodiversity that ecosystem has. So ecosystem number 2 has a greater biodiversity. They both have the same amount of richness, they both have the same amount of critters. But for these guys right here, we've got the number spread evenly, everybody's got an even number amount, everybody has abundance. So ecosystem number 2 has richness, and it has abundance for all of our species that are there. Ecosystem number 1 has richness, the same richness as ecosystem 2, same number of different species. And this one has a lot of abundance, but the rest of them do not. So they're lacking abundance for each species, and so that's what's affecting their biodiversity index value. So ecosystem number 2 is showing a greater amount of biodiversity. All right.